Hello, everybody. Basic Species Committee here. What's the day's date? Monday, the 16th, June. I do have a verbal agenda I was gonna give you all. I wanted to have three things on my agenda item, which was review the preseason survey, talk about the treatment, and then we have a request from Kara from at the Benzie County Conservation District. She wants to do what is that? I don't know.
Boat washing of them.
A boat wash, yeah. So we might have to reach out to the village if that's the best place for boat wash event, or go to the DNR site. You want to talk about that. And then I think Mark is going to, did we lose everybody?
No, everybody's on, it's just that Mark's not,
Okay,
and they don't, and who's ever on, or whoever, it's only Alexis that's on, she just
Okay.
doesn't have a camera on.
okay. Good. So those are the three agenda items that I have. I'm sorry I didn't get out of summer's here and everybody's busy.
What was the second one again? Review preseason
And
survey?
then the treatment.
Oh. Got it.
Okay. And we sent out an email regarding the treatment, and it sounds like it was pretty successful, although we put some comments from the public, we can talk about that. Is there anything else that would like to add to the agenda? To motion to approve?
I'll move to approve it.
Okay. All in favor,
We
say,
need a second.
I'll second.
one in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Start with the preseason survey. And, public comment I usually have, we did have, a gentleman join us at on the boat for the preseason survey. Susan Halloran's husband, and I forget his first name.
Joe.
Joe Halloran, okay. Which was good. He had a lot of good questions. So Roger and I were able to go, and we were just talking, it was 3.5, 4 hours. It was a long day, frankly. I was ready. So what did we do? We introduced, we got on the boat. Who was all there? We had the driver of the boat from the guy we ran the adventure.
Sean from, somebody had rented the boat.
Okay. And yeah, we reviewed that with the township board, and they recommended that we rent the boat, and it was actually perfect because it was large enough for everybody, very comfortable, had a driver, so we were able to talk.
See,
Good,
so everybody's here.
good, everybody's here. And so Mark can help me too with the preseason survey, but, Dr. Doug Holman and Natalie were there, Roger and myself and a member of the public. Spent a long time on the lake, wandered the whole lake. Got into the marinas, found some issues. Easy Street, we found some issues, and you'll note, that Mark also sent us the treatment, proposal through that team. There was one watch site that wasn't treated, and that was, what do you call it, there's this little cove up near the township property. One that just burned not too long
Yeah,
ago.
it was normally on the east side of Andy's Point.
East side of Wings, thank you, yeah, and that, we'd like, anybody that gets out on a boat, we'd like them to kind of keep an eye on that area. We didn't recommend treatment right then, but we want to monitor that site. There was also a nesting loon right there, so frankly, that was good that we didn't treat it, in my opinion. But it is to get, quite a bit of growth, milfoil growth there that we want to keep an eye on that, and maybe once the loons are fledged, we can get in there and treat it or something.
Is that the area that we did not treat last year?
Yeah, I mean, show them on that map there, Roger, if you wouldn't mind.
So we were up in here.
Yeah,
Mark, did PLM talk with you about that? There was an area last year that we decided to not treat late in the season during a second treatment and see
Kind of using it as a control
Yeah.
group in a way.
it as a control group, but how it reacted to winter weather. Was that something that was discussed when you guys were out with PLM?
I think that would, we're opening up the floor to you, Mark. Do you know if that was discussed? Is there?
Which area are you referring to?
You have to say something when you're pointing there, Roger.
I don't know if you can see it.
No,
No,
It's,
should go. to that.
east of Andy's Point. In this area, this arc right here. This
Yeah.
way is toward Lake Michigan.
Right. Let's see.
So nobody from PLM.
Yeah, I don't think, let's see.
nobody was on PLM for the preseason survey.
Yeah,
It was just Doug and Natalie.
Oh, PLM didn't make the preseason.
They
survey?
did not, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that would be that's who I would have thought would have brought it up in the first place.
I know we spent some time all the way on the east side of the lake. Didn't want to treat a portion of that, and we did go through there and then.
I just wanna make sure that because we chose not to treat an area last year to see what happened, that we actually do our due diligence and look at what that population looked like. So, and on the email that you forwarded,
Yes.
it did not have their maps
Oh,
in the forwarded email, so I didn't see where stuff was documented. Would it be possible for you to resend those maps to?
I'm trying to remember.
You referenced maps in the email saying maps were attached, but I didn't have any maps.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Phil's not here, so I bet you he'd remember what area it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no.
Well, I thought it was that area off like the wetlands park.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the maps either, so in my,
Mark, do you have maps from the survey?
I'm scrolling through my emails as well, trying to find that.
yeah, I'm doing the same thing, Mark, thanks. Making me feel better. Yeah, I don't see the maps either. Good point, Tyler, I guess I.
I wasn't sure if it was a forwarding issue or if they just never got attached, so.
Yeah, I don't have that handy, but I'm gonna look on our shared drive here. You keep going, and if I spot it, I'll grab it.
So. Yeah, you have the treatment recommendations, PLM and a representative from Kaiser went out and treated, and I forget what date. We did have one member of the public question, and there was a response from Doug Pullman. And Cindy, I'm wondering if that attachment or that email that Doug Pullman sent about the treatment and what's going on would be suitable for the website, maybe?
So if I could, Doug, what I did is I updated that a little bit and I sent I sent that earlier this afternoon and kind of a summary that you could use for that newsletter.
The newsletter is already, I put in a paragraph.
Oh, okay.
I took out, I just had an entry sentence and then an exit sentence that we're excited to have you on board, that kind of thing. And some some of you, I pulled some sentences directly off your proposal. And it was, I wanted to keep it short and sweet because otherwise people don't read it in this area, so. It was probably a little over a paragraph. And I asked Cindy to review it before she sent it on to she said it looked good, so it was. I had to have it first thing in the morning and it was kind of late when I realized the date, so I think it might have been 12 o'clock when I did it the night before it was due. So sorry, I didn't send it to you, Mark, but
No,
it just came,
Yeah.
you know.
that's
Okay.
totally fine. What I sent you, if you had something else that you wanted to use, that could be, you know, the synopsis as well. You're welcome to use that too. So
Okay,
I do have the map, the treatment map up,
well, good.
and let me see if I can share here.
That's got his computer too.
Did that pop up?
Yes, it did.
So, yeah, these were the areas that we had all agreed upon in the preseason visit that they would be treated on the first treatment, which was last week.
Oh, okay.
On the 10th, I believe. Yes, or the 10th. I got my dates right here. And so they're fairly small areas, but we saw both curly leaf pondweed, which is not unusual this time of year, and then Eurasian water milfoil was starting to pop up. Lake temperatures were pretty cool. They were still below 60 degrees. So it's likely that we'll see milfoil taking off. We'll be on the lake with our first full vegetation survey here before the 4th of July. It being a northern Michigan lake, we're a little bit delayed. The vegetation just doesn't pop up as quickly as it does in the southern lakes. But with the treatment of these couple areas, we'll be out there before the 4th of July for the first comprehensive survey. What that will do is that'll give us, all right, so we'll look at definitely these areas that were treated, these small areas, but then we'll also be looking at this particular map. Each one of these numbers is a location of our observation areas. And so within each area, if we showed the polygon map, which would be kind of the spider web of how these are actually mapped in terms of a cell, we take several data points, observations within each cell. And those then get automatically averaged in our analyses. And we'll end up getting data for each, where you see a number here, you'll end up with a colored dot, which indicates various, the densities. We could do it by plant. We could do it by complete vegetation cover. So once those data become available, obviously the initial interest is where were the invasive species found, and do they merit treatment? And I think that's one of the questions that always comes back that's very important, is depending on what it is and where it's at. If it's not isolated and it's mixed with other plants, we're cautious about recommending treatment. We'd rather watch it. If it begins to expand, then there may be treatment. But keep in mind that they're spraying liquid from the surface standing in a boat. So the pinpoint accuracy on this is fairly limited as a function of there's a slight breeze or a slight water movement. That's why usually treating a larger area is much more effective, because you might get carryover from the edges of where you're treating, but if you're trying to treat a single plant or a clump, it's kind of hard to ensure that you're just treating that, or that you can even treat that depending on the conditions. So these particular 3 areas were identified as, we're starting to see masses of these things that are somewhat monolithic, not just a small stand of your Edgewater milfoil mixed in with other native plants. These were a little bit more concentrated in terms of their presence and their cover.
Okay. Mark, so that data, we have Alexis on the line too, and she's our data guru. Would that, and of course Tyler, would that data be available for our team to review and look at also?
Yeah, so let's talk about that for just a second. What it is that you'll be seeing here, and I'm going to stop sharing this just for a second here. This particular map, when we're on the lake, we're using our iPads and we're immediately populating information for each one of these observation areas, observation sites. That's uploaded immediately, and literally on our way home, the staff are developing summaries of what was seen. Now, we have an online mapping program that we've developed. So literally at the day's end, all of that gets mapped. Now, we typically don't share that immediately until we check all of our data and make sure that observations were matching up with our known data points. It's just kind of a quality assurance, quality control. Once those are confirmed, we can share with you the link and a password that you can get onto the site, and you can map just about any species that we observed in the lake. You can look at the total three-dimensional density, which is really a reflection of all the plants that we observed. But you can have access to those. I would just suggest that when that time comes, we have a conversation, is we try not to publish those in advance. If they're available and you guys have interest in seeing those, absolutely. That's the reason why we do it. Some lakes are just like, yeah, just show me in the final report. And we get that. But especially if we come up with, we're starting to see concerns and patchiness that needs attention. Those maps are really helpful to have rather than waiting until the end of the season, as we can pull those up at a conversation like this and talk about, hey, we're starting to see some indications of expanded nuisance plants, nuisance conditions, and invasives, or talk about, here are the conditions pre-season and now after the first treatment. So there's a variety of opportunities to look at these. What you'll see projected in those maps is the entire survey information. One of our tasks is, and under task 2, is after there's 30 days after treatment, so long about the week after the 4th of July, we'll be back out and we'll only look at those particular areas that were treated. And of course, if we saw something else in the June survey, it gives us a chance to check on it, communicate with PLM saying, hey, we're seeing some conditions that warrant some midsummer treatment. So we'll have enough observation opportunities on the lake to A, see what's happening with all of the plants throughout the entire lake, and then B, look specifically at these areas that were treated on June 10th.
So Alexis is, does that sound good to you, Alexis? Then what he's talking about and having that availability, and we can review it?
Yeah, that sounds like it'd be really helpful. And yeah, I guess as soon as you're done with your QA/QC, as early as you can share that password, I'm sure we'd be interested in looking at it, and we can commit to not sharing it out beyond the committee.
Yeah, definitely.
So Doug, I'll just look to you to coordinate that. When if we get the survey information, we'll share it with you. And I think what's easiest is, and it makes, we found it really is helpful from a communications perspective, is if you, Doug, are serving as the point of contact, and that way
Okay.
we're not sharing with a couple other people, and then you're saying, well, wait, where did that come from? As
That's
we share with you, and then it's your distribution that will kind of dictate how that information gets shared. So Alexis, what we'll do is we'll notify Doug, and then you guys can discuss how you want to get access to that and who you want to see.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mark. Anything else, Mark, that is on your mind right now for us to learn from? I guess the one thing I wanted to mention is the reports of fishing are quite good. Both Phil and Kevin are out they're doing with their guide services, are out with fishing because it's been so, the fishing's been so robust, so that's good. Keeps the fishermen off the township's back too, that's good, but it's, I don't know if there's anything we're doing, it's just, fish come and go.
What would be
Anyway.
interesting, what would be
Go ahead.
really, yeah, what would be interesting with that is, I'm sure these guys are keeping good records of their catches, is just historically, because they use, it's just not some guy randomly going out and eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich in his 12-foot rowboat and catching a fish, but it's a consistent approach and really targeted sampling for species. If there was, and not to say where, but if there was the ability to get those data to say, hey, over the last, 5 years, 10 years, however long they've been chartering is, year to year to year, this has been kind of our catch, number of trips, number of fish per trips. I don't know if that's available, but that would be at least anecdotal information, I think, to kind of supplement some of the fisheries analysis that came in the last couple of years. Just a thought.
Okay, we'll ask. One thought I just had, Mark, was when we were out and Roger and I were out on the boat. I mentioned to Doug and Natalie about, habitat and, improving our habitat, and we showed large areas with no plants. And they both said, well, that's kind of unusual for us to be asked, how can we get more plants or at least improve the habitat with native plants? And so I want you to keep that on your radar. It's, they were both were thinking about it and didn't have immediate recommendations about how to maybe improve the habitat or, get more plants, frankly. But I just kind of want you to, we're kind of unusual in that way that we want more plants in certain areas. We want to improve the habitat. And usually with your group, usually you're managing problem areas and you have enough to do with the problem areas, but I think we would want to certainly keep that on your radar, that we certainly want to improve the habitats, and I think we have more plants.
Yeah, so it's a great point, and I think that I would tend to echo the agreement of adding more vegetation is usually a challenge, because if it hasn't been growing up in an area, there's usually a reason. It's either the sediment consistency, the currents, something is tending to preclude vegetation growth or rooted vegetation in that area, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It gives you diversity of habitat. So one of the things that you'll see with our analysis at the end of the year is there's a couple of our ecological metrics that talk about the types of plants and the distribution of plants, kind of the diversity of plants that goes towards kind of a fisheries habitat in lakes where we see, monolithic growth of something like starry stonewort. Those metrics show a very low score. And the nice thing about these metrics is they're published. So this is scientific literature that we're using to say, hey, the Shannon Diversity Index. So that there's kind of a standard, and some of these actually have Michigan, kind of like a Michigan value scale that is helpful for the lakes that we're looking at here in the state. The other thing that could be done is a fisheries habitat analysis, and that is, it's kind of an adaptation on what we typically do during our surveys, but we also look at, bathymetry is known, but within the different depth zones of the lake, we'll look at sediment consistency or sediment character. Is it sandy? Is it cobble? And what's interesting about the sonar uses that we have these days is the side scan sonar. There are published algorithms that basically say, with this type of a signal, that typically indicates a silty sediment or a sandy sediment or a cobble. What we do then is we'll also take bottom samples just for defining the sediment characteristics, grain size analysis, and then we'll correlate that back to the imagery that we have. And so you literally you can map the physical habitat of the bottom. Some of the ecological metrics then talk about the plants and the value they provide for the fishery. And then the other part of the fisheries habitat analysis is really looking again at visual, but also sonar of any coarse woody debris that you have in the lake. And I would say that right now the research is indicating that it's really fallen trees that provide that big shot of diversity of fish habitat over, hey, we've got a bottom here that's got nothing growing on it. Maybe that's good for spawning areas. But in terms of just kind of the broad array of kind of fish habitat, from spawning to prey species to improve fisheries, it's all the scientists, especially in Michigan, are really coming back and putting a lot of emphasis on the coarse woody habitat. And, when we have a recreational lake, many of us don't want to go out water skiing and saying, oh yeah, we're going to run into submerged logs below the surface. So it's pretty strategic, especially when you have a developed shoreline, is nobody's going to want to say, well, we've got a distance of 50 feet between docks. Nobody's going to fell a tree in between these things for fish habitat. So it's analyzing the shoreline. Where do you have kind of those naturalized riparian areas where you could potentially add coarse woody debris, coarse woody habitat. So it's a separate analysis than what we typically do. We have some of the metrics that give a good indication of the ecology of the plant community. But there are a couple steps beyond that you could take to really kind of start advancing this at scale. And that's really when you talk about, are you having impact in the lake in terms of improvement, is what's happening at scale. What's the condition of the lake? If there's if you're looking for walleye spawning areas, you're not finding the suitable substrate or wetlands connections, whatever it may be, it all kind of adds up. And when you talk about the habitat piece, you have a lot more working parts in that, but we can add that analysis. That's something we could talk about, I would say, later in the year. Before we finalize the report. I'll stop there. We tend to get pretty excited about the analysis, but if you want the next step, one last thing, what's really interesting is the DNR often says we have unbelievably great information on the actual fishery itself. The fish sampling, electroshocking, the netting, but what they always typically say is we have very little information on vegetation. And they typically don't do vegetation surveys. I know Michigan State just got an aquatic habitat grant to look at a lot of the lakes up in the Northeast Lower Peninsula. And it was specifically for the vegetation because the state just does not typically collect that. And so as you develop that database, it's pretty valuable then as the DNR wants to look at, or you want to have more conversations with the DNR as well. We're doing that in a couple lakes our other lakes right now, interacting with DNR on that.
Good. So yeah, you let us know and we certainly have some contacts to share. One other comment, Dan, our local DNR folks, I know them well, Phil knows them well, he used to work for Fish Division, DNR, so that's good. But one other comment is that I gave to Natalie a drone survey, a couple of drone surveys of the lake, big hard drive, and I hope you heard that I sent that over to you, and she mentioned that she would just, it's township property, but she mentioned that she would bring it back when she's back in town next, but I just wanted to, if you have enough room on your server, if not, I think, you know, you can keep it for a while until your analysis is done.
Yeah. Yeah, we have
So-
fascinating videos. We really appreciate those.
Oh, good.
The last I talked to Natalie is I think she was trying to figure out how to download the terabytes of information on that. But it
Yeah.
was really fascinating, and I think in some cases when you start to look at intentional efforts to improve fisheries habitat, is we always like the idea of the visualization, kind of the before and after or side by side. So
Good.
you know, as you look ahead and you start looking at some of the other conditions in the lake, those can be very helpful. It's difficult to quantify. It's great for kind of the quality of the habitat and anecdotally what you're seeing. But unless you really kind of have that overlay and you're doing quadrats, it's a little bit more difficult. We find that with our resource observation sites, because they're consistent, we go back there every time, every year with the same methodology at about the same time. It makes for great year-to-year comparisons, and that's important if you're especially, and we saw that in the PLM reports, the 10 years or so of tracking the presence of milfoil, your Edgewater milfoil has been great. I mean, you saw that in your invoices, but over the years, this steady, solid decline of milfoil covering the lake, and so we'll have a little bit more of that for different species, because you certainly want the bad stuff to be decreased and you want the good stuff to increase. And so that's one of the benefits of also being able to look at that for the individual species of, hey, we'd love to see this replacing the milfoil. And so we're starting to generate some of that data now.
Good, good. And the township was very supportive of getting that drone survey, and paying for it, so just keep that in mind if you do have some recommendations about future comparisons and all that. I think in the past, they've been very supportive, so, so we may be able to do that again.
Yeah, that would, if you spread it out over a couple of years, that's when you could really say, here's what it was. We've been tracking this on a broader basis for the lake. What's been happening here? And that's when you could be, looking at the kind of the year to year to year, and visuals like that are so much more helpful than so many numbers that everybody's scratching their heads saying, what does that mean? Versus, wow, look at visually how much that's improved.
So we have to be careful. I think the township board was concerned about, you can't make that public, but I'm certainly thinking you could make public, that whole video around the lake. There was some concerns before you were on the board, Cindy, that they wouldn't want to share that whole video.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Yeah, and I don't think we would use it. I mean, it's helpful for us to get kind of the, when we're looking at it from the surface, to also see what it looks like underwater, but we wouldn't have any intentional plans to actually use or publish this data until there was future conversations where we said, hey, could we do something with it?
Okay. I've been doing a lot of talking. Does anybody else have anything? Or Mark?
I just sent an email to Bree asking if she has the inventory maps from last fall. So that we can hopefully get those and compare to the preseason data. Cause I just wanna make sure that we do that and look and see, follow through on what was a contested item last September. Make sure that we do our due diligence to look at that and see how that is responded. Good. And can follow up with Mark when we had that, and just kind of compare the inventory results.
Okay, so more information coming for you soon, Mark, thanks.
Okay. The only other item that I thought I'd bring up, and just to see if it resonates with you at all in a need for consideration is, and there's nothing wrong with this, and there's no requirement to do this in advance, but in some settings where you're doing a lot of lake-wide treatment, we'll sometimes ask the applicator to try to post, the signage along the shoreline within 24 hours or 24 hours before that treatment, so people have a chance to say, and especially if you've got a big party planned and suddenly they're saying they're showing up and putting the signs in the same day they're treating, and you're like, okay, now what do we do? Is just the thought of maybe when there are some larger treatments, is more advanced notice from PLM or the planning from the team to you folks to be able to say, hey, we've got a treatment event that's coming up. This is the time of the week that will occur. These are the areas to be expected to see the signs. The treatment that occurred, which was very limited, there was less than 4 acres treated, kind of in isolated areas, but the signs went up the same time that the treatment was happening. And I think that was where one of the residents came and you saw the questions that were being asked and a response from Dr. Pullman. If there becomes a situation where the township or the committee says people want more notice, let us know. Sometimes that's an extra cost for the applicator, but it also can spare some heartache or some heartburn, I should say, if people are suddenly surprised that there's a treatment and they're not supposed to use the lake. So just something to consider. I'm not recommending anything now, but we did notice it was a simultaneous posting with treatment. So
Was that the situation with the landowner this time? They had planned to use an area of the lake, or what was the situation there?
yeah, this was one of the PLM staff were putting down signs, and I don't know whether he was out or not, and he couldn't answer any questions. And Josh from our staff was on the lake, and so Josh ended up talking for him for a bit, and that's why I asked Doug to follow up with him directly. The gentleman was very polite, wanted to share, was willing to share his email address, and so that gave us the opportunity to communicate that information with him directly. And I think that the email from Doug and then to Doug Berry, my write-up that I sent you, if that is something that could be used just to share informationally with the chemicals that were used and how there's testing, it always helps inform the public in terms of the process. And if you can answer the questions ahead of time, or people are aware that this is going to happen, sometimes fewer surprises are often a good thing on the lake treatment side of it.
What the document that I received today that you wrote, my plan, unless there was any objection, was to use that as the invasive species committee report for the board. Therefore, it will be posted on the website, and that way anybody that wants to say it can say it.
Good. Interesting. And yeah, so it'll be posted on the website. All right, good. That's okay with you, Mark, then, and that he
Yes.
shares that with the board, and then that will be public?
Yeah, I think what I sent you this afternoon, Doug, or this morning would be the appropriate. It's a little bit, it's more formal as a written summary than it is an email to an individual.
Yeah, I was talking about the document I saw today.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yep.
That's the one, Cindy.
So speaking of putting things on the website, Cindy, are you doing that or is that you, Todd? Cause I just noticed our minutes are, the last minutes are from October of
No, I
24,
know.
so, okay,
I was doing them and then, well, we'll just,
okay.
Okay, there's some complications. So you'll find out if we can post them again or not. No, we won't be able to. It's all good? Okay. Okay, anybody else have anything for Mark and his team?
All set.
Okay. Last item I had is, Benzie County, Conservation District wants to set up a boat wash event sometime coming up here soon, and they would like a couple, 2 or 3 volunteers, looking for volunteers. Does anybody have any suggestions or want to raise their hand? Not sure when yet.
Yeah, I think so Benzie has a grant for boat washing. So they have a boat wash that they use, and the Manistee District used to have one too, so we would schedule regular events, but we ended up selling ours to the city. And now they've redone it for other things, I think watering flowers and whatnot, but the last couple of years, we have tried to get Benzie to come into Manistee County for a couple boat washes a year. And we would pay them to come down and run their crew in Manistee County. This year, I don't have the capacity to do that, and get those things scheduled. So Kyla, with the grant funding that they got this year, they're still trying to get into Manistee County. But basically bypass me and go work directly with other lake organizations that might be interested. So she had reached out to me and I gave her the groups that might want to do something, including this group. So I figured we could talk about it as, it wouldn't be a cost to the township. It would mostly just be us having to figure out a good date for an event on Portage Lake. As far as I know, Kyla has a standing permission with the DNR for all DNR launches.
I actually approved it before I retired.
Yeah, so she's set on that, so really all that she typically needs is someone there day of to talk to voters. Ask questions, hand out, aquatic invasive species information to people. And just kind of help with traffic. It's usually maybe a 3-4 hour day in the middle of the day. You don't usually get the fishermen, you're gonna get the recreators. But it's not a lot of effort for volunteers. But if it's something that this group wants to contribute to, it would be finding volunteers or members of the committee themselves volunteering to help out. And then, figuring out a good day and communicating with Kyla on a day that might work. So usually they try to target events, like when they do, yeah, Onekama days, or like Bear Lake does music on the lake days. That's one that we did last year for Bear Lake. You probably could expect to see, on a good day, 60 to 80 boaters. Usually they'll wash anywhere from 30 to 50 boats. So that's pretty much it. It really wouldn't be a whole lot on the committee, other than if anybody wants to commit some time or commit to finding volunteers that might be interested. She probably only needs 2 or 3 people.
It's just I can do it, but. She says, how many people she needs, so we can find somebody else to help.
I can match them.
Yeah, okay.
And I talked to our water quality specialist. She'd be interested in helping, but it really depends on the day. So, if once we
Yeah.
have a date, I can check with her.
Okay, thanks, Alexis.
And I know that I'm just too busy to spend the day on the link this March, so. If somebody wants to. Kind of take the lead or be a lead volunteer and communicate with Kyla directly about scheduling.
She just sent me an email just before this meeting, so.
Okay.
I'll respond back, but looks like we have enough, maybe, depending on the day, I might just twist Roger's arm over there too, he has nothing to do. But no, I mean, if it's at the DNR launch, I might be able to find somebody there at DNR staff to help too,
Date depending on,
Yeah, me too,
probably help.
yeah. Okay, I'll keep you posted then, we'll say yes, and depending on date, and I'll keep you posted on the date. I'll have her select several dates, and then we can narrow down which dates would work best for us. Okay. Is there anything else that would come before the board? So. Okay, the motion to adjourn. Thanks, Mark and Alexis, for joining us. And Alexis, you just made the motion, right? To
Sure,
adjourn?
yeah.
Okay. Who seconded
Oh my
it?
God.
Oh, Tyler did. All right. Thank you all. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
Very much.
next month. When's the next meeting? Next month, the third Monday at 4 p.m.
Which would be,
The 21st.
21st?
yep,
Okay.
July 21st at 4.
All right. See you then.
Fine.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Al. Thanks,
Thanks,
all.
see you.
Quick one.
Yeah, that's good.